wanted. Wright paid handsomely to snap up the Dunwich Horror. That was a creepy, weird movie, and the book was bizarre, but I loved it. It was great. It proved very popular with readers, and Lovecraft increasingly produced work that brought him no money, but he affected a calm indifference to the reception of his works. Lovecraft was in reality extremely sensitive to criticism and easily precipitated into withdrawal. He was known to give up trying to sell a story after it had been rejected once. Sometimes, as with The Shadow over Innsmouth, which included a rousing chase that supplied action, he wrote a story that might have been commercially visible, but did not try to sell it. Lovecraft even ignored interested publishers. He failed to reply when one inquired about any novel Lovecraft might have ready. Although he had completed The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, it was never typed up. After he had moved to Providence, and he and his wife, Sonia, having been living separated for so long, agreed to an amicable divorce. Green moved to California in 1933 and remarried, now get this, in 1936, unaware that Lovecraft had never officially signed the final decree. Uh-oh. Boy, she'd have been in jail now, wouldn't she? He never signed the final papers. Throughout Lovecraft's life, selling stories and doing paid literary work for others did not provide enough to cover his basic expenses. He lived frugally, subsisting on an inheritance that was nearly depleted by the time of his last years. He sometimes went without food to be able to pay the cost of mailing letters. Eventually, he was forced to move to meager lodgings with his surviving aunt. He was also deeply affected by the suicide of his correspondent, Robert E. Howard. In early 1937, Lovecraft was diagnosed with cancer of the small intestine and suffered from malnutrition as a result. He lived in constant pain until his death in 1937 in Providence in March. In accordance with his lifelong scientific curiosity, he kept a diary of his illness until close to the moment of his death. Lovecraft was listed along with his parents on the Phillips family monument, and in 1977, fans erected a headstone on which they inscribed his name, the dates of his birth and death, and the phrase, "I am Providence," a line from one of his personal letters. Groups of enthusiasts annually observe the anniversaries of Lovecraft's death at Ladd Observatory and of his birth at his gravesite. In July 2013, the Providence City Council designated H.P. Lovecraft Memorial Square and installed a commemorative sign at the intersection. How nice. That was nice. That was nice. According to Joyce Carol Oates, Lovecraft has, and Edgar Allan Poe in the 19th century, has exerted an incalculable influence on succeeding generations of writers of horror fiction, horror fantasy, and science fiction. Author Stephen King called Lovecraft the 20th century greatest practitioner of the classic horror tale. Yes. King has made it clear in his semi-autobiographical nonfiction book, Danse Macabre, that Lovecraft was responsible for his own fascination with horror and the macabre and was the target figure to his influence his fiction writing. Yes. Awesome. Early efforts to revise and establish literary view of Lovecraft as an author of pulp were resisted by some critics, of course. In 1945, Edmund Wilson, they ought to hang this one, expressed the opinion that the only real horror in most of these fictions is the horror of bad taste and bad art. Well, la-da-dee-da. back then you had these aristocratic people that if it wasn't to their taste, nothing was good, I guess. So, but mystery and adventure columnist Will Cuppy of the New York Herald Tribune recommended to readers a volume of Lovecraft stories, asserting that the literature of horror and macabre fantasy belongs with mystery in its broader sense. Colin Wilson, he did a survey of anti-realist trends in fiction. The Strength to Dream, he wrote, cited Lovecraft as one of the pioneers of the assault on rationality, and included with him M.R. James, H.G. Wells, Aldous Huxley, Tolkien, and others as one of the builders of mythicized realities over against the failing project of literary realism. Lovecraft began to acquire the status of cult writer in the counterculture of the 1960s, and reprints of his work proliferated in 2005. The status of classic American writer conferred by a Library of America edition was accorded to Lovecraft with the publication of Tales, a collection of his weird fiction stories. Awesome. So a lot of Lovecraft's work was inspired by his own nightmares. His interest started from his childhood days when his grandfather would tell him Gothic horror stories. So, and his most significant literary influence, of course, was Edgar Allan Poe. Like Lovecraft, Poe's work was out of step with the prevailing literary trends of his era. Yes, they were. They were way ahead of their times. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. Back then, the people, they were stuffy. Look down their nose at you. And the ones that would appreciate it probably couldn't afford to purchase it. Or they wouldn't even publish it. So, the ordinary person, basically, I don't think had a chance. I don't think the ones that needed to read it could get a hold of it to read it. So, I really think that, a broad section of America at that time, it wasn't available to them, just to the people who could afford the magazines and stuff. So, and of course, those people were stuffy and all that good stuff. So, like Lovecraft, Poe's work was out of step, of course, with the trends of the era. Both authors created distinctive, singular worlds of fantasy and employed let me see. The influence can be found in such works as his novella, The Shadow over Innsmouth. Lovecraft references Poe's story, The Imp of the Perverse, by name in Chapter 3. And in his poem Nemesis, where the ghoul-guarded gateways of slumber suggests the ghoul-haunted woodland of Weir, found in poems Ulalume. A direct quote from the poem and a reference to Poe's only novel, the narrative of author Gordon Pym of Nantucket, is alluded to in Lovecraft's magnum opus, At the Mountains of Madness. Both authors shared many biographical similarities, such as the loss of their fathers at a young age and an early interest in poetry. I think Lovecraft had a little bit more success as far as selling his stories, but he refused a lot of them. So he was kind of a recluse, I think, as far as that goes. But they both basically, struggled financially and had a difficult life. He was also influenced by Arthur Machen's carefully constructed tales concerning the survival of ancient evil into modern times, and his beliefs in hidden mysteries which lay behind reality. Lovecraft was also influenced by authors such as Oswald Spengler, Robert W. Chambers. Chambers was the writer of The King in Yellow, of whom Lovecraft wrote in a letter to Clark Ashton Smith. Chambers is like Rupert Hughes and a few other fallen titans, equipped with the right brains and education, but wholly out of habit of using them. Lovecraft's discovery of the stories of Lord Dunsany, with their pantheon of mighty gods existing in dreamlike outer realms, moved his writing to a new direction. and resulting in a series of fantasies in a dreamland setting. Lovecraft cited Algernon Blackwood as an influence, quoting the centaur in the head paragraph of the Call of Cthulhu. He declared Blackwood's story, The Willows, to be the single best piece of weird fiction ever written. And he tried to be, no, it's not poetry. I think I agree. I think his stories were much better. Dunwich Horror was fabulous. Excuse me, I recommend that highly. So, another inspiration came from a completely different direction. Scientific progress in biology, astronomy, geology, and physics. His study of science contributed to his view of the human race as insignificant, powerless, and doomed. So I was kind of right. He was just so disappointed, I think, in humanity that, he just didn't like people, I don't think. I think because of the way he was treated and everything, it really, soured his outlook on people, and I can't blame him. Lovecraft was also a amateur astronomer from his youth. He liked to visit the Ladd Observatory in Providence. His astronomical telescope is now housed in the rooms of the August Derleth Society. Lovecraft's materialist views led him to espouse his philosophical views through his fiction. These views came to be called Cosmicism. Cosmicism took on a dark tone with his creation of what is today often called the Cthulhu mythos, a pantheon of alien extra-dimensional deities and horrors which predate humanity, and which are hinted at in eons-old myths and legends. The term Cthulhu mythos was coined by Lovecraft's correspondent fellow author August Derleth, and after his death, Lovecraft jokingly referred to his artificial mythology as Yog Sarthari. Okay. His writing style owes much to British writers. Among the books found in his library was The Seven Who Were Hanged by Leonid Andreyev, a strange manuscript found in a copper cylinder by James DeMille. His style has often been criticized by unsympathetic critics, yet scholars such as S.T. Joshi have shown that Lovecraft consciously utilized a variety of literary devices to form a unique style of his own. Prose poetic techniques combined with essay form. So, they have a World Fantasy Award. Let's see. There's some books out there you can get on his life. So, again, Lovecraft is also he influenced black metal. Go figure that. Craftian is H.P. Lovecraft's inspired black metal, and it rules. If you're a fan of black metal or legendary horror author H.P. Lovecraft, you hit play on their album, you're immediately transported into melodic and mystical world. There you go, Chris. You need to, so with lives. Yes, you need to check out Craftian. I'll write it down for you so you can look it up. They're black metal. And totally inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. The moment you hit play, you're immediately transported into a melodic and mystical world that Craftian builds on 8 tracks, leaving you wanting more. Their appreciation for H.P. Lovecraft comes from a very sincere place. Vocalist and lead guitarist Lord Mordiggian is a literature teacher who